by them on a cloud journey and helping them present business cases and all that good stuff. So now I'll hand it over to Tom.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Tom Wild. I'm an Azure specialist at Microsoft. So that effectively means I help customers solve business problems with the use of the Azure cloud, effectively. So good to meet you all.
Thanks, Tom. So first, the agenda. We're going to cover what is CloudNative Transformation, and then what is Azure. Since we have Tom, who's with Microsoft, is the Azure expert. What we would cover also applies to all the other providers. So just want to make that remark. And then we're going to cover the benefits of Cloud Native, the essential step on your cloud journey, possible obstacles and complexities you might face, and then we end off with a Q&A. So first, some housekeeping rules. If you have any questions, please put those questions into the Q&A box, and we will cover those at the end of the presentation. And any questions that we don't have time to get to during this webinar will be responding to a question through email within 2 business days after this event. So the main question here, what is Cloud Native Transformation? So Cloud Native, that question has a lot of different answers, but let's start with a simple definition. The Cloud Native architecture and technologies are an approach to designing and operating workloads that are built in the cloud and take full advantage of the cloud computing model. It essentially says that everything you run in the cloud only would be considered cloud native. Then we have another official definition that is stated by the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which is a little bit longer, and that one goes like this. Cloud native technologies empower organizations to build and run scalable applications in modern, dynamic environments, such as public, private, and hybrid clouds. Containers, service meshes, microservices, immutable infrastructure, and declarative APIs exemplify this approach. That's a little bit longer, and I think both of those will make more sense in a little bit. But if you look at Cloud Native Transformation, we need to start somewhere. And in most cases, that journey starts in the data center, where for some reasons they want to migrate up to cloud, which is that's a good approach. They may have older applications that are monolithic, that you can't just move into services that are managed in the cloud. So they would do a lift and shift. And eventually, all those resources from their on-premises data centers will be in the cloud. And would we consider them cloud native? I would say so. Everything is running in cloud. Would they be optimized? No, not so much. And that's a part of that whole journey of the application modernization. And it's a continuous journey when you move to the cloud. So we take a look at the refactoring of those monolithic applications, so they can be containerized, and they can use SaaS services or PaaS services, which is a big step. And that's when you can realize the real benefits of moving to the cloud, both from a cost perspective and also from a management perspective. So those are the benefits. And Cloud Native Transformation is really important for the agility and speed of any business, getting faster to market, new products, and so on. Tom, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think most people, their end goal is software as a service, because the management is completely offloaded to the vendor of that software, but that doesn't meet all the use cases for customers. So there still will be infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and some things in between as well for many decades, to be honest. But most people's goal when they say they want to be cloud native is SaaS first, and then when they can't achieve their business goals through SaaS, it will be PaaS, platform as a service. If they can't do that, it will normally be IaaS or something in between the two, to be honest.
No, definitely. I agree 100%. And then we can't forget about the companies that are actually born in the cloud, startups, but they may still use IaaS and PaaS and SaaS, all the spectrum. But they are definitely cloud native. So before we go any further, we have a question. It's a polling question. And this is, which best describes where your organization is on its cloud native transformation journey?
I think even at Microsoft, they're not all the way through our cloud journey, to be honest, and not all of Microsoft is using our own cloud, Azure. There's still some things that will remain on premise till they're replaced by SaaS or PaaS, or can't move for cost reasons or something like that. But the fact is that the use cases to remain on premise or traditional IT, those are being kind of chipped away, and there's very few use cases left to remain kind of on-prem. It normally comes down to security, compliance, or something commercial, to be honest. Don't know if you see anything else on your side, Michael.
No, I agree completely. Even if the end goal is to get out of the data centers 100%, it's very rare to see that, for sure. Okay, so let's see the answers to this poll. So it looks like, let's see what's going on here. Planning out the transformation project and making steady progress, the goal is in sight, are the two leaders, and it's coming. The numbers are pretty much identical. And then we had 14% information, education information gathering, 14% socializing, and secure organization support. Okay, and seeking expert partners to help guide our journey. Okay, that's good. So, Tom, if we should touch on planning our transformation projects here. That's obviously a really, really big one. And that's something that we do very thorough assessments, create the business cases, and look at the education that we could provide for the employees. And it's very, very important. Do you have anything to chime in there, Tom?
Yeah, I think it sounds like that the ones that are in planning, it could be that they're planning to create the business case, or they've already had the kind of approval from the business. So we could take that in two different ways, but the planning does take the longest part, to be honest, for it to get done properly. But it needs to get done for it to have a successfessful project, to be honest. Things that don't get planned properly, there's normally outages, or commercial surprises down the route. So the planning part is essential, and there's lots of tools that all the cloud providers do to help with the business case part and the assessment part. So it's a lot more mature than it was a few years ago. All the cloud providers, particularly Microsoft, are keen on kind of giving away these tools for free to help people build the business case or understand what the cost or what the benefits, what the outcomes will be.
Yeah. And another aspect of doing the assessments is I've seen quite a few times where organizations, they actually realize that they have resources that they really don't use.
Yeah.
But they still pay for them, and they keep on buying new hardware. So that's another good thing for it. And then the second leader here was making steady progress. The goal is in sight. That's good. That's good to hear. Always like that. Always like that. And then what is Azure? So this one is for you, Tom.
Yeah, so Azure is Microsoft's public cloud when it comes to cloud native, where it's infrastructure, PaaS, and there's even a bit of SaaS in there, to be honest. But if we think of what is Azure, this is as high level as you can go, bird's eye view of what Azure is. And I suppose it starts with the infrastructure part, which is your compute, kind of your processing power of your virtual machines, the networking, the storage, and the fundamental building blocks that are essential is security and identity. That those are the key parts that you need to think of at the beginning. Where is my identity? How are we going to authenticate? How is it going to be secure? But essentially, Azure is a toolkit. It's like Lego, really. My son loves Lego, so I kind of explain to him what I do by using Lego. And Azure has those building blocks to help you solve business challenges to effectively. And there's hundreds of new building blocks added weekly. Last week at Microsoft Ignite, but when we think of cloud native, we think of actually Microsoft are creating the building blocks for us. So if you were to run like a database server or a SQL server, if you're going to do it yourself, you have to think about the operating system running Windows, you have to think about patching and security, and then you have to do the same with SQL. Someone has to manage all of these components, the agents around it. Whereas if we think cloud native and serverless, you just think about your data and your database. And that's kind of the real goal of being cloud native, is searching for doing as little as possible and getting the most amount of value for it, and offloading that responsibility to the cloud provider, in this case Azure, whereas we would do database as a service. You don't worry about the operating system, you just worry about the identity and your data effectively. That's kind of the key part. Behind the scenes, they're all run on virtual machines and networking and storage, but we're just abstracting that more for you. So think of it as a higher level. You're doing less, we're doing more, and we're doing it as a service effectively. So these are just tools and building blocks within a public cloud to get stuff done, to meet your business challenges effectively. And on the right-hand side, there's many tools to get it done for you, really, whether it's reporting, whether it's building, whether it's kind of doing it all as code. Yeah, it's all there effectively for you. I don't know if you've got anything to add on that, Michael.
And there's also the aspect of high availability that is built in, and the SLAs. It's obviously a really important thing here, and also being able to actually put the resources closest to where your end users are, right? Looking at the different regions and all of that stuff. So something that you obviously can't do if you run your own data center. You kind of stuck. Yes. And then we have the next slide, which is harnessing the benefits of cloud native. This is also a little bit more of a it's more of a Microsoft approach here, but it also applies to all the different cloud service providers. So you want to touch on this one too, Tom?
Yeah, I think one of the key things I just mentioned a few minutes ago is time. Like this does, when you head towards the right-hand side of software as a service or platform as a service, the saving, yes, it should be commercial, but the biggest saving will be time, engineer time, administration time, because you're offloading a lot of responsibility of running infrastructure, managing infrastructure. Think about the physical entry to a data center, all the certifications that go into it, as well as like the hypervisor, the networking, the storage. You're offloading a lot of that to the public cloud provider. And the key benefit to businesses is time, right? It saves you a lot of time so that your staff don't have to kind of manage, patch, learn, buy new every 3 to 5 years. maintain it, worry about it. They just focus on your IT department or your infrastructure department, just focus on providing business value. And I think that's the key thing, is you're shifting kind of the IT mindset to think about something less, but think about the business more, and focus on kind of delivering value to the business rather than kind of keeping the lights on and things like that. So that's kind of one part, is time. The second big benefit we speak to customers a lot about is innovation. So if you're going to kind of build a new application, or if you're maintaining an existing application, set the goal, set the sights on being cloud native to free up your time, to reduce the amount of development you have to do, to reduce these kind of mundane tasks that administration or developers or testers or SecOps have to do. Head towards being cloud native that way to save more time, net effort and money. And some of the other ones is, utilize your data to get insights out of it. So we see companies where they adopt harnessing, cloud and AI and ML models, and you don't have to build all these things yourself. A lot of them are there as a service, but when companies harness them, they normally increase their operating margin. They normally increase their operating income. They just get more value out of it to serve the business. Again, just providing more business value. So do you have anything to add on top of that, Michael?
Yeah, and another thing that is obviously a topic that is really important right now, and it's when we look at the energy crisis, and also in addition to the energy crisis, looking at the carbon footprint that we all want to try to reduce, right? And by reducing carbon footprint, it's a good sustainability thing. We will close down the data centers on-prem. We will use the resources in the cloud. Those resources will not have to run 24/7. We will shut them down as we need them. We will spin up new resources as we need them, and we will just delete resources when we don't need them. I think that's a big thing as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's it. The Microsoft have actually made some really big objectives when it comes to sustainability. I think it was by 2025, the entirety of Microsoft will run on renewable energy. And by customers utilizing that, customers and partners, they can then share that with their employees and their customers and their partners. And it becomes a kind of a real driver of cloud utilization to hit these environmental sustainability and governance goals that most companies have these days.
It's interesting. It's interesting to look at what Microsoft did too with their data centers on the bottom of the ocean. They keep them cool. A few years back. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting, and also how they actually, all the cloud service providers try to put the new data centers close to a power plant or whatever, so they can they can actually use the excess energy that comes from those, and just be more sustainable. I think it's a really good thing. Mm. So it shouldn't only be an environmental thing, but I mean it's also for saving money, obviously. Also, looking at the different migration triggers, I know we touched on a few of these before, but if we start going clockwise, looking at the cybersecurity threats, if you move to the cloud, you will have managed security. You can have service providers, SecOps. You can take advantage of something that you would have to pay a lot of money for if you did on-prem. You have to hire your own team, and it still would not be as efficient as these. Then when we look at I can't touch on earlier, rapidly scaled web apps and infrastructure. Another super important one. It's all about being fast, being agile, quick to market. Let's say something like events like Black Friday, if everybody is aware of that, which is Amazon, they for instance, they sell a lot of things for a discount. They need to scale up the infrastructure to be able to actually handle and deal with that customer demand. And it's the same for all kinds of business, obviously, but they will have the peaks and they will have the load. And there's no reason to have your infrastructure up and running 24/7. This is just, again, the ability to be agile. Definitely one of the biggest ones. And application innovation. If you use PaaS service for that, for instance, you will use your different deployment slots. Now, getting technical here, but you don't have to have any downtime with you. You can always try your new applications or your innovative applications in real time, and then when it's time to use it in your business, you can just switch over. Another really big one. We have the cost optimization for applications. Again, it's the power of many. So we obviously pay way less using the infrastructure that one of the cloud service providers provide than buying our own. And we can just cost optimize because, again, we don't have to use it 24/7. Like we touched on before, faster time to market. It's, we can develop apps super quickly and test them out, and we don't have to buy an infrastructure that's going to take you 3 months to get it to your data center. You can just spin it up as you need it. And obviously, a really big one right now is enabling hybrid work. You can do it through, you're using virtual desktops, all kind of, Office 365, if we're talking about Microsoft, everything. It just makes life so much easier. And then the data center contract expirations, which is what pushes a lot of our customers into cloud a little bit faster than they maybe want to. But, if they have to re-sign the contract January 1st for another 3 or 5 years, they don't want to do that because they can see how much it's actually costing them, and especially now with energy prices being so high. And again, switching from CapEx to OpEx, you don't have to, at the end of the year, spend all your budgets to buy new hardware because you don't know if you're going to get it otherwise next year. Now you can just move it to more operational, and you pay for what you need. Anything to add in there, Tom?
I think the cybersecurity part that used to be a bit of a blocker for cloud adoption, but I think that's become so advanced in the cloud now that it's actually an enabler and a trigger that people want to utilize cloud services to be safer, to reduce their risk. You mentioned kind of, flipping from a CapEx to an OpEx model. People are now seeing being agile commercially makes sense because there's been lots of unpredictable events over the last few years. Sustainability we covered off on the previous slide as well, and the fluctuation of energy prices as well. That's, over the last 6 months, that's kind of one of the opening conversations that we have with customers that run their own infrastructure, data centers, co-location, whatever it may be. So that's kind of, I suppose they're one of the most common conversations over the last 6 months to a year.
Yeah, and in addition to the security and the compliance, now that we actually do get more data centers regionally, it's easier because I know especially in a lot of European countries, they can't really move the data out of their own countries. But when cloud providers open more and more data centers, pretty much in each and every locality, or at least close to it, it makes it so much easier as well. This one is for Innovate Fast with a fully managed platform. I know you touched on this before, Tom.
Yeah, I think the key thing with this slide is really just to show kind of the benefits of offloading that management overhead. So whether you're running, microservices, containers, virtual machines, serverless, there's many different ways to offload that management. And when you offload that management, you get various benefits, like we spoke about earlier, faster development, time to market. There's cost saving benefits by doing that as well, such as, not paying for licenses if you're making software. If you're doing any development, you shouldn't be paying licenses unless it's in production, and reducing the amount of failure rates, those sorts of things, and building up your own availability. You can do all of these things when you offload that management to a cloud provider. And that's kind of where the value is, like effectively doing more with less. That's what we want to enable our customers to do. And there's many different ways to do it.
And also, if you touch on the DevOps, I mean, the automation is huge. You by using automation and DevOps, you remove one of those elements that is actually a human element that can mess things up, usually unintentionally. So that's a big one too. And a key balance deliver modernization. Again, like we touched on a little bit of previous slide, DevOps is looking at the processes, using the different tools. Could be for application development, for instance. You want to have your security gates. You want to make sure that your code is up to standards. No deviation there. You have your templates that you use already. So the tools and the processes are obviously super important to be able to just recreate new environments or applications quickly and using the best practices. And that's going to give you the control stability that you need, and also the speed and results, and no curveballs thrown at you. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think the picture on the right, really, the balance, it is a balance between, the tech I find super easy and really interesting, but if you don't have the right governance around it, mistakes will be made, whether it's, cost shock or someone leaves a security hole open that might cause a compromise. There has to be a balance between enabling developers and innovation, but not shooting yourself in the foot, not getting a big bill at the end, not being risky with, infrastructure and IP addresses and security risks at the end of the day. You have to find the right balance for the company. And it might be setting your development up with their own little environment that's completely segregated because you want to reduce risk, but leave the innovation as high as possible. But normally for kind of IT, you have to find that strict governance rule to allow, a reduction of risk effectively.
No, I agree. And now when we can use the different pre-populated policies for the different compliance regulations and whatnot, it's obviously really helpful. Like you touched on, cost. We do want to prevent people from maybe spinning up the most expensive virtual machines there are, those queues, and people do it by mistake, and also the ability to with tagging and such to have a really good sense of what resources are being used, how much do they cost, to be shut them down automatically. There's so many possibilities and options out there that we can use.
I find it's actually an enabler for cost management within a business, because normally you have obviously enterprise IT, but then all the different other parts within the business that want to innovate or create develop apps, or deploy something that has some business value, but who pays for it? And it used to be IT pay for everything, but now with cloud, you can say, actually, here's your subscription. You know, by default, you're allowed all of these SKUs, you know, so you're not these big virtual machines that cost a lot per hour. You've got these set ones, and you have to request approval to deploy anything outside of it, but it's got accountability, budget accountability. So that department has that subscription in this environment. It's secure, but you pick up the bill at the end of the day. And it really kind of changes the mindset of, whoa, actually I have to pay for it now, and I have to justify the business value behind it at the end of every month, or even the end of every hour you can do it. But that's a bit of a culture shift within business, but helps people be more agile and kind of, you know, fail quicker effectively at the end of the day. Why run a service that's costing you a lot and not achieving a huge amount of business value? Turn it off, fail quick, learn from it, go on to the next project. And cloud's a really, really good way to fail fast. And, you know, the more you fail, the eventually you're gonna succeed and get your goals.
No, definitely. And again, looking at the control and stability, I've been working with the customer. It's a global pharmaceutical company, and they used to have 4 regions where they all did their own thing, pretty much. And this now is going to be merged into one big environment. But the good thing with these guardrails that we have, certainly, is that in these different regions, they have different compliance regulations, right? But using the different subscriptions here, we can make sure that we have those guardrails in place for all those different regions in accordance with their, you know, local, if you may, rules and regulations. So it's really helpful. Now come to the cloud adoption framework, which is one thing that I find very, very important for any type of any business that wants to move to the cloud or that are already in the cloud for sure. So, Paul, you want to touch on this?
Yeah, I think of this as the how. When people say, how do I adopt the cloud? And you can just go and turn things on, right? I've done that many times before. But in terms of actual, you know, deploying a business application, or, you know, migrating something or developing, we've created a single cloud adoption framework, a single voice that all of our customers and partners and internally at Microsoft, we all speak the same language, because it can be quite complicated. But essentially it all boils down to those 5 or 6 points in there, with the most important being the central point of what is the strategy, and it's the why. Like we spoke about earlier, the goals of agility, cost saving, innovation. If all of the business understands why we're doing something, what is the strategy, what are the business outcomes, how are we going to make money or save money or create products quicker, that's kind of the key part that everything else comes out of. And then we can think of, right, now we understand our strategy, we can start to plan, and here's all the things that we suggest customers and partners think about when they're in the planning mode. How am I going to skill up? How am I going to maintain my skills? How do I change my organization? Because the tech's the easy part, is the people in the process that requires a bit more time to think about. Then how do you create your landing zone, your environment? Then you're actually using the technology to create your plumbing that your applications and your enterprise IT can sit on. Then it's a case of migrating and innovating, you're actually executing there, moving things to your cloud provider. But always you have to think about governance and manage. So who's going to monitor it? Who's going to monitor the spend? Who's going to pick up the bill at the end of the day? Who's going to ensure that it's constantly secure? So Microsoft released many, many features every single day on our clouds. So how do you kind of validate those features? Because a lot of them are to do with increasing your security or kind of speeding things up and automating things more. So you do have to think of this as a constantly iterative process. It's not migrate and leave. It's, you know, constantly validate and understand and get more value. Because for those people that adopt a cloud adoption framework where it's constantly checking, constantly validating, they normally end up just paying less and less because cloud infrastructure prices do drop. And for those people that migrate and leave, they normally end up spending more on cloud than the people that are searching for enhancements, searching for improvements, searching for cost saving opportunities. So this is our single voice, our cloud adoption framework that is open source, and we kind of advise all of our customers to consume and utilize.
I agree 100%. And also, you know, business models change, right? So that's why it's important to do these well-architected reviews to make sure that is the strategy that we defined in the beginning, is that really valid, or do we need to do something to change that? Do we need to change the architecture of this? It's super important. So it's an ongoing process, I think. And also, we mentioned before, there are a lot of organizations, they did migration from data centers as a lift and shift, and maybe they didn't have that strategy, or they didn't have that plan in place, and they didn't have a good landing zone, and that makes them vulnerable, especially from a security standpoint, because we want to make sure that we lock down this as much as possible. Because if you look at the cloud, it's essentially wide open unless you cut it down, and that's the way it's constructed. So very, very important. Okay, so we have one more polling question. Which of the following obstacles, complexities, has the greatest chance of stalling or derailing your cloud-native transformation journey?
What would you say it would be, Michael, based on your experience?
I think it's the outdated technologies and monolithic applications, because that tends to be put on the back burner, and we'll do this later. And it could also be really old applications that no one actually knows how to deal with anymore. That's what I've seen. But it's also, I see, the limited in-house cloud skills or resources. They kind of go hand in hand. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, all of them really. I've seen a lot of them, but yeah. Normally it's down to, in my opinion, the most common part is the lack of buy-in from the senior leadership. So if you think about the previous slide, which was the strategy, and I think if the whole business, you know, from top down, understand why cloud transformation is so important, then projects move quicker. There are less blockers, right? All the way up, you know, all the way down from board or CEO, whatever the organizational structure is, because then, you know, other departments that may not have been aware of cloud transformation, they're involved. They kind of give it the thumbs up. Yes, you can be more secure. So security will be involved, and, you know, HR will want to be involved because there's identities, there's joiners, movers, leavers. How are we going to improve that experience? IT are normally the ones executing, but obviously application owners don't always sit within your IT team, right? They're normally completely separate. So I think if you have a business strategy that everyone's on board or at least aware of, things move a lot quicker, and there's less blockers, less hurdles.
I agree. And actually, the first and the last, the lack of buy-in and the inability to successfully estimate the total cost of cloud consumption, they kind of go hand in hand, especially if they already started a lift and shift project, and they want to see those cost savings that they were told market upfront, and you won't see those until you actually do some optimization. It's usually around 2-3 years before they actually see any good savings.
Oh, there you go. Most of the time it's outdated technologies.
Yeah, yeah. It's it is tough though, because there are so many old applications out there,
Mm.
and the developing team, they may not even be there anymore. So that is a hurdle. Or I mean, they can't even be turned into microservices. So it's tough. And again, it goes hand in hand with the limited in-house cloud skills or resources, right? If
I
you don't
think on
have the right
the
people.
just on the skills part and the resources, certainly in the last few years, there's been just an insane amount of resource and documentation and free exams and free courses, and YouTube is, just it's where I get most of my learning. Is I'm more of I watch videos and listen rather than read, and then I play.
Yeah.
And some people learn differently, but there's all different ways of learning. There's gamification portals where you can solve a challenge with a deploying cloud native and microservices architecture and things like that. So in terms of skills, there's a lot out there. I think Microsoft just released one called Microsoft Learn, and I'm sure there's lots of others for different cloud providers, but there's lots out there.
No, that's true. But I think it might be time, enough time on the hands for these guys that need to upskill. And it also needs to be the willingness to do it, I think.
Yeah,
So because it takes time, and it has actually a lot to do with the buy-in as well. And this is not buy-in from senior leadership. This is buy-in from the resources themselves. And especially, let's say you have a migration project and people are afraid that they will actually lose their jobs because, you're taking this away from me, you're moving it to the cloud, and that's not a skill I have. So they will resist until you actually involve them in the projects and say, hey, you're a very integral part of this. We will do some upskilling and you'll work side by side until you just can, you can take over the wheels and you do this yourself. It just that's what I found a lot of this before. Just making sure they know that no, this is your baby. You're going to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just here to point you in the right direction. So next slide. Anticipate obstacles and mitigate complexities. Again, alignment is king. It's what mentioned Tom with the executive ownership and buy-in. It is super important because obviously this is going to cost money, and they need to have a solid business case before they will sign off on it. Otherwise, it's obviously their job on the line, right? This is what they're hired for, and that's very important. I've seen in projects before, where we would have workshops with the security team, and these guys they were in charge of security on-prem. And like I mentioned before, they were not interested in moving anything to the cloud. They would not show up at those seminars and meetings that we had. So finally we had to talk to the executive sponsorship, and they would have to pretty much tell them what to do. They had to show up and be part of it. And that was the first step to making them an integral part and making them feel like they were actually on board with what we were doing here. We were not trying to steal the job away. So, and that comes obviously with the stakeholder alignment. It's so important.
Yeah, I think this of the why, the executives sponsoring the project, the right people aligned to it, so everyone understands the why, and then it's how are we going to get it done? So you got the right stakeholders executing on it, and then potentially using partners to fill the gap. So where there's a lack of skills, or perhaps they've got an outsourced model for execution, professional services, managed service, whatever it may be, partners can execute on their behalf and manage or semi-manage. There's lots of flexible models these days. So if you think about it, the cloud usage is completely elastic. It's never kind of steady like that, very rarely. So the partner models that go with it are very, very flexible as well, right? So they definitely fill that gap.
Yeah, no, for sure. And with the partner engagement, these are the experts that will walk side by side with the employees to do that, bridge that skill gap they have, and make them feel like they are on board, and it's a knowledge transfer. And what better way to get knowledge transfer than from someone, if you want to climb the Mount Everest, what's the quickest way? You ask someone that's been there before, right? So makes life easier. Okay, so we are at the Q&A time here. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat, and I see we have some already. And if you don't have time to actually get to your question, we will respond by email within 2 business days.
I think we did have a couple of questions. The first one was, in terms of cloud native, how is patching and monitoring kind of handled? Because when you're managing things traditionally, you have to patch it, monitor it, update it, put it in pre-production staging and all those sorts of things. I mean, if you go down the route of cloud native, most of the time, all of that's done for you. And that's, again, one of the key benefits. One of the headaches of IT is kind of, constantly patching it, securing it and updating it. And that's most of the time completely done for you. There might be some maintenance windows, for big patches and things like that. But when you offload that to be cloud native, it's normally done for you.
I agree.
I think the second question was a framework around skills. So what skills are necessary? What do you think, Michael? What skills are necessary to drive a cloud native environment?
I think, first of all, it depends on if you have any cloud skills before. Otherwise, get the foundational knowledge and then add, like, to go back to Tom's Legos before, add the building blocks of what you're trying to achieve, what types of resources you want to use. Let's say you're very heavily on databases, let's say SQL. Just make sure you understand the different options you have available for you. I think that would be my best answer. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, there is in the cloud adoption framework that we presented a few slides ago. If you certainly from Microsoft perspective, if you search for Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework, there is a whole section in there on skills, and there's even a page for skills transition. So, I used to be an IT administrator. How do I, what skills do I need to be a cloud administrator? Or I used to be in the monitoring team or the security team. What's that transition path? What courses do I need to attend? What exams do I need to do? What technologies will I use, and how do you learn that as well? And like I said earlier, video's best for me, and then kind of playing with it, breaking it, fixing it is how I used to do it. So yeah, diving into the actual cloud itself and using it is that's the way it really sticks in my head. We did have a third question as well, Michael. How do you advise your clients to handle the migration difficulties of outdated technologies and monolithic applications?
So that one is actually something that we see quite often. And we would have to use, in our case, we use, we help our customers through our app development team to help them, refactor or actually even rebuild those monolithic applications and outdated technologies. So when you look at outdated technologies, it's I would say the first thing that comes to mind is you use an operating system that is no longer supported, right? So first thing would be obviously to try to update that, and obviously you need to make sure that the application will still work after you do that. So that goes hand in hand with the app development.
Yeah, certainly from Microsoft technologies, so like Server 2008, SQL Server 2008, they're all end of mainstream support. Those technologies, if you move those technologies into Azure, they're still supported. So there's some of the benefits of moving it.
Yeah.
I think Server 2012, that goes end of support next year. So people are planning for that. I'm sure the same thing will happen in Azure as well. But I suppose the key thing is if your application doesn't support a modern operating system, eventually you're going to have challenges anyway. So that has to be on your replace, in your replace category, right? Because if it's not supported, but it's still used, you need to think of, what is the application life cycle of it? It needs to be retired or replaced eventually, or you run it at risk effectively.
And that's obviously one of the benefits with the microservices. You don't really have to worry about the underlying operating system or anything. It's decoupled, so you can just you can get rid of it as you want to.
Yeah,
you can still have your application.
Yeah, if you've developed it yourself, I think that's the key part. If you own the IP, it's a lot easier. If it's a off-the-shelf old application, that's a little bit tricky, right? Because you don't have control over it. But if you own the IP, it becomes a lot easier, right? There's partners that focus on migrating mainframe technologies and COBOL and very, very old versions of .NET. There's many different ways to go cloud native from that journey, from the start of that journey.
Definitely. I have another question here, Tom, and that is, so the big three public cloud providers are all very reputable and capable partners. What criteria do we use to choose the right one? Do Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud each have unique strengths?
Well, I'm a bit biased, aren't I, coming from Microsoft, but I would say it goes down to that slide around strategy. What is the long-term strategy? That's the key part of cloud adoption. It's not just I've got this one application or one virtual machine or one microservices. It's what is my goal? What am I heading for? Do I want to be with the most sustainable cloud? Do I want to be with the cloud that's got certain AI features? I think that's where it comes down to that very long-term strategy, because lots of the clouds do very, very similar things, but I think of, if you're going to choose between one out of those three, you need to think about long-term strategy and the whole ecosystem rather than just what's my price for that virtual machine. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's also the multi-cloud approach to it. So I see quite a few of our customers, they have a multi-cloud approach, because there are certain things from certain cloud vendors that are better suited for certain things in your business, right? But like you mentioned, it's if you have it on SQL, well, I would say it might make sense to go with the company that are created SQL, right? But apart from that, like Tom mentioned, they are all very similar. It's pretty much the same design. The resources are pretty much the same as different names, but the thought behind them are the same. What we do when we do our business case, business cases, we do a thorough assessment and we compare the different cloud vendors to see which one is a better fit. And it doesn't have to be only based on cost, which one is cheaper. At the end of the day, it needs to be which one is actually better for your business. Which type of resources do you use? Which play better together with each other. So it's definitely not black or white here. It's more gray. And let's see, have any other questions? Oh yeah, actually another question. Under what circumstances do companies use multiple public cloud providers? Want to do that, Tom?
No, I'll let you do that. I'm all in on one cloud, I'm afraid.
No, I know. That's pretty much what I touched on for the previous question, and that can be what I've seen a lot is that few customers do not want to be. They don't want to be bound to one single provider. They want to be able to leverage both, and it could be for a high availability situation or business continuity. But those are pretty much the top reasons that I see. And they also want to be able to use obviously that leverage when it comes to negotiating, right? If I'm dedicated to one, I don't have much leeway to get better deals. At least that's that's a common perception, and I'm not sure if it's 100% true, but that's about it. Anything to add, Tom? Although I know you're biased.
No, I think you answered it well.
Thank you. Good, guys. And I think we might be at time here. We thank you so much for joining our webinar here today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either Tom or me or both. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have or anything you might need. It's been a pleasure to be here with you today, and we will definitely hope to see you again the next webinar. Anything to add, Tom?
No, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for being here. It's been great.